Hello all you slayers and initiatives. I am back and I am so sorry that this video has been delayed. I had multiple technical difficulties filming this video, but I think I have everything under control. Knock on Mr. Pointy. And I'm so excited to talk to you guys about all of my Buffy hot takes. A few of them are spicy, most of them I think are pretty mild. There are maybe one or two that I know you're gonna hate me for. But honestly, it excites me. So to start off with, what exactly is my history with Buffy? Les Slayers du Vampire. Basically, between my junior and senior year of college, I binged watched Buffy. I bought this red box set of it on DVD and I just was going, I wore out my laptop just watching episode after episode. I was hooked. I was hooked on the mythology, and I love Buffy. Just to put that out there, Buffy is one of my favorite protagonists. I think that Sarah Michelle Gellar is so underappreciated for the amount of heart, the comedic timing she brings to the show. I mean, she carries it on her back, on her bob, whatever haircut she's doing, she's carrying the show. And I think that what a lot of people who try to take the Buffy formula, they don't always have a Sarah Michelle Gellar. They don't always have someone who is so great at going back and forth between the campy aspects, the serious aspects. I think from the body alone, we see what a brilliant actress she is and how you really need someone who can bring that level of thing to. I think her and Holly Marie Combs from Charm they were acting on these shows, and she is so great. And I think what's special about Buffy is it is a show that has such a dynamic place in not just genre television history, but television history in general. I see it as very much a bridge between the sort of Xena, campy, feminist shows that we've gotten, and sort of the X-Files, which was, even though it had its own genre niche quality to it, I think that a lot of people appreciate it more and saw it as a serious show. And I think Buffy was right in the middle. I don't think it was treated as seriously as it should have been, especially in certain seasons. Something in my eye. But I do think it was treated as more elevated over a show like Xena, which was campy and ignored canon like it was its job. Buffy, for all its flaws, I think is an overall very consistent, well done show that is polarizing because you care. I think about it like Gilmore Girls. Like, if you've watched all of Gilmore Girls, you have opinions on it. It doesn't matter. You have to have opinions on it. Like, you take 6 people who have watched Gilmore Girls, whether they be casual fans or fanatic gillies, and they can talk for 7 hours about who's the best boyfriend, which is the best seasons, if they like Rory, they hate Lorelai, Luke, Dean, Jess, Logan. It's a vibe. But that's a discussion for another time. We're here to talk about Buffy, and so I'm going to discuss with you seven season 7 takes of my thoughts on Buffy. And if you like this video and you like my content, I am just asking you to please, please, like, share, subscribe, smash that notification bell, which is what I hear them say in the beauty community. You know, just slightly tap it. You don't have to smash it. I don't know if it wants to be smashed. Ask consent first. When it comes to big bads, I would say that my favorite is Glory. I think Glorificus, what an icon. I love her. She is just a queen. And I think narratively, Angel, Angelus, and Faith are probably the strongest of what they challenge Buffy within herself as a person, as a character. I think they show really interesting, compelling parts of who she is. But I think the big bads I end up coming back to the most on this show are the trio. And I think what makes the trio so compelling, especially retrospectively, is how perfectly they call the kind of toxic masculinity of these sort of, like, I guess beta males would be the term, but more like men who feel entitled to women's bodies because they see themselves as smart enough that they deserve it. And I think that what makes the trio so compelling is that with Buffy, for the most part, all of our villains who are demons are seen as inherently evil. They almost have no choice in the fact that they are evil. You know, Angel was given a soul as a curse. Spike gets a chip put in him that makes him unable to hurt people. But the trio are human, and many of them have interacted with Buffy throughout the show, and yet they choose to do harm to her. Not because they need humans to eat, not even because they have like an inherently evil code, but because they're just bad. They're bad, they're evil, they enjoy inflicting pain on other people. They enjoy using women for their own sexual desires and don't care if they're treated as humanely or not, whether they be human or otherwise. There's so much about those characters that encompass the banality of evil that comes in these toxic male spaces, of toxic male entitlement. These men who use their smallness, their insecurities to destroy the women in their lives. And I think that's something I come back to because, you know, Angel, Glory, even Adam, they're villains in a large sense. You know, they're big bads in an otherworldly way. The trio are humanely bad.
We save the world. I say we party.
I've always said that I think Buffy only has 2 bad seasons, and I think those seasons are season 4 and season 7. I actually think season 1 is kind of fun. I don't know, I love camp. I do understand that it is too Monster of the Weeky, but I think of it as kind of like a precursor to what Buffy would be, you know? A couple of episodes at the beginning that are very Monster of the Week, very, you know, building that world, and then the overarching plot. And I think with, you know, this season 1, it was slowly getting up to there. I think it had its growing pains, but I don't think it's unwatchable. I know people are like, it's there. I'm like, I find season 7 unwatchable. I find season 4 painful to get through. Season 1, if you go in knowing that it's camp, it's like, you just power through it. And even if you don't want to power through every single episode, it's not bad because it's poorly written to me. It's bad because it just doesn't hold up as narratively compelling as the later seasons do. And that, you know, is a failing, of course, but I don't find it unwatchable. I don't find it painful. I'm not like, ugh, season 7, ugh, you know, it's not like that for me. And I also think the movie is pretty good as well. Like, despite Kristy Swanson being how she's chosen to be, I find that movie to be a lot of fun to watch. I think it's quite cute. I like all of the, you know, before they were famous sort of like cameos. I think Hilary Swank is in that movie, which is a trip. I think the reason why I like season 1 and I like the Buffy movie is because I really do love Buffy. And I think the strength of the Buffy character as she exists in the show and in the movie is how quickly she chooses to take the path of the Slayer, in comparison to so many chosen ones who spend like a season like trying to figure out the basics. I think that Buffy wants to be normal, but once she realizes that she's extraordinary and she has no choice but to be, she's like, all right, I'm gonna be extraordinary. And I think that the struggles that she goes through are the emotional journeys that make sense for someone who did jump into their destiny very quickly and sometimes feel sort of shaken by what she has done and is naturally fearful of what she gives up. But I think Buffy is one of those heroines who answered the call so well to me that I find the beginning of her journey even more compelling than the end, because I admire, just from a character perspective, how she really does believe in helping people, how she really does believe in taking care of each other, and I think those are her greatest strengths as a character. And I think the movie and the show early on really highlight how she really does work hard to live in the fullness of who she is, and I think that's what makes Buffy great. I love Buffy. I think season 1 is charming. So Buffy content, like it. Season 1, I would say it's fine.
Written here, Buffy Summers, class protector.
give myself one of these. So this is gonna be my one. I think that there are characters in Buffy who get killed and it's like, this is a crappy death. Tara, Anya, hated it. But I think the one that guts me the most is Kendra, because I think the way Kendra is used in the series is so emblematic. I think the way that Kendra is used in the series is so emblematic of the issues with race that are all throughout Buffy.
Here. In case the curse does not succeed, this is my lucky stick. I've killed many vampires with it. I call it Mr. Pointy.
You know, Kendra is the Slayer who is born when Buffy dies in the end of season 1. And she is a Jamaican. That accent is like, I mean, I have a terrible accent because I'm not trying to do that shit. I don't have an accent. So I get it, girl. But even that, I was like, girl. They really try to make it seem like she did work. I was like, Bianca, you gorgeous, you beautiful. You could have just been first generation. You didn't have to be from the islands if that's how you sound. Because I'm first generation and I don't sound like I'm Jamaican. Everyone thinks I'm Black American. I'm like, yay. I like to be everyone in the diaspora. Kendra being this, you know, the Jamaican Slayer who was raised very strictly, who was not socialized and doesn't really have friends or companionship, then she, you know, she meets these white kids and they teach her having fun is all great. It's like in those movies where like a white teacher goes to an inner city school and like she teaches the black kids and Latinx kids how to read and they teach her hip hop. It was like that except without the hip hop exchange. You know, she didn't even bring us some plantains, so it was very one-sided. She initially only exists to be in contrast to Buffy, not just, you know, with her phenotype, but just in her mentality, and then is used as kind of like a sacrificial lamb to show how powerful Drusilla is. And I just find that to be very frustrating, especially because she's kind of the only real female character of color that we get in the series that's good. Because we get a bunch of women of color as among the initiates, and they're all terrible. They're all annoying, nobody likes them, including myself. Like, don't be racist towards them, but they also suck. You know, it's like that kind of thing. And it's hurtful because it's a show that is trying so hard to touch on all these aspects of like femininity. Like there's intent between why Buffy is a cheerleader and blonde. And there's so much intent in deconstructing so many tropes within horror, but yet when it comes to race, they almost lean into it even more. And I find that just aggravating to watch, even though I love the show, because it just seems so, it seems wrong. You know what I mean? It seems narratively incoherent. And it makes it hard for me to enjoy that. And I made a joke during a live show that I did that I find Kendra's death like a call out because, you know, she's a Jamaican girl who was raised too strictly and obeys orders too well so she could be brainwashed. And I was like, was that a call out to me? That's disrespectful. Like, I found that to be a microaggression. I did not stand for it. Because when we do see female slayers of color, even in flashbacks, it's usually they're either treated savagely in terms of the first Slayer, who I don't think ever actually speaks. She just grunts every time she appears. And then two other Slayers of color being murdered by Spike. And it's just disheartening because there are so many white female characters in Buffy who are multi-layered and interesting, and that just is never done with any of the female characters of color, and Kendra is just Exhibit A. And I know that there have been discussions about how initially they wanted to cast Cordelia as black, but there was issues with interracial relationships and da-da-da. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, I don't need Xander and Cordelia to be together, so like that's not an issue for me. I think it upsets me because I think that even if you wanted to have a relationship between Xander and Cordelia, and you couldn't because they weren't allowing you to have interracial relationships because I guess Boy Meets World and Star Trek hadn't all been on TV. But I just feel like, why don't you value the representation that a black Cordelia would have been over the ability for Cordelia to be in a relationship with Xander for like a season and a half? Like, you know what I mean? Like, to me, that's just a weak excuse because it's like the relationship between Xander and Cordelia is almost meaningless to the fabric of the show because everyone knows that's a mistake. As much as I love Faith, and I think Faith is great, and I think that Faith does get to touch on all these like complicated, you know, class issues within whiteness, I think they both should have just existed. They could have both been accidentally dead. We just had 3 Slayers, and I think that would have been fine. I think that would have been fine.
Have we met?
You hit me with an axe one time. Remember? Get the hell away from my daughter.
Oh.
Here comes the spice. And I don't mean that because I just don't ship Buffy. Because when it comes to Buffy versus Bangle, I mean, girl, I'm Team Bangle, but like, it's all problematic in its own ways, and I don't really care about the age difference irregardless, because I'm just like, they're all played by 30-year-olds. It doesn't really do anything for me. It's not like Riverdale, where it's like teacher-student bullshit and all kinds of other hypersexualized things. Like, there are issues with it. I think that the relationship between Wesley and Cordelia was much more problematic than anything between Angel and Buffy. But I think my issue with Buffy comes from how I think it really didn't complement the characters of Spike and Buffy in the long run. I think that Spike was a great character, and I think he was also good in that last season of Angel, which I actually did see. I thought he was funny, I thought he was like charismatic. I really, really liked Spike. He was one of my top 5 favorite characters on the show. And even when he got with Buffy, because I expected it, I came into Buffy late. So I knew Buffy was a thing, I knew that Willow was a lesbian, and I knew who Dawn was. That'll come up in a second. So I expected Spike and Buffy to be together. I did not know about the sexual assault. And when that happened, it really changed the dynamic for me. I really couldn't enjoy them as a couple, but then in the next season, their couplehood becomes such a big part of how the narrative works that my inability to move past the fact that, like, why does she care so much about Spike? I get why Spike cares for Buffy. Like, I think it, as a toxic relationship, works really well. It is a one-sided relationship between Spike to Buffy. Works really well. Them being in love with each other is weird to me after that point. I feel like there is so much weird galaxy brain stuff that goes on with their relationship that I just find myself asking, like, okay, he assaulted you in this weird control dynamic and seeing red. Alright. Dawn was like, I'm gonna burn you if you touch my sister again. Get it? Everyone knows that this is what happened. It's a fidelity issue. And even if at this point they wanted to be like, she cares about him still, they don't have a conversation about it in a meaningful way. They don't really discuss it. It's just kind of like, all of a sudden she loves him. And I'm just like, why? Why? I understand, and I'll even say this, I understand why Buffy happens. I understand what makes their dynamic work. I understand why people are into it. I think there's actually a lot of good there. But I think that post seeing Red, the show is really just not prepared to deal with the dynamics of that relationship and what it would mean to these characters. And I think the show was just weaker for it. Because for a feminist character like Buffy to be in love with someone who tried to assault her, who did all this stuff in this way, just felt very unexplored and cheap. Especially because there is no conversation. There is no real payoff for it. It just is something that happens and like we're just supposed to be like, yeah, but he was in a bad place. Kind of like with Outlander with that bullshit with Jamie beating Claire. It's like, oh, well, it was a one-time thing. It's like, it doesn't matter if it's a one-time thing. We had to all see it happen. Like, most people I know who ships Buffy, like, they hate that scene because it does do deep harm to that relationship, because then it's just kind of treated as like a sad, sorrowful love story, which I think it can be, but it doesn't work anymore. At least not to me. So Buffy, not a fan. Plus, I should Spike and Drusilla. Or Spike and Joyce, because Spike and Joyce had chemistry. I love them when they're watching their shows together and how they talk. Like, I love them. They were great. I wish we had more of them together. Joyce is an MVP in her own right.
Buffy. No. Donnie, I have to.
I don't think this is like a spicy take, but I'm just gonna say this. I like Dawn. I like Dawn because I always knew she was gonna be there, and also, like, I'm a fan of Michelle Trachtenberg, so that was my girl, so I was like, she's gonna be on Buffy. So I really was looking forward to her being on the show. And actually when I started watching it, I was like, where's Dawn? Like, why hasn't she showed up yet? And my sister was like, you'll see. And then she shows up in season 5, and I totally get why, if you're watching the show live, Dawn's existence is like, ugh, where did she come from? But for me, as someone who expected her, I find her appearance to be an interesting way that the show can constantly switch up dynamics, because they fit her in so organically because there is no introduction. She's just there. And I think that's actually really smart of the show, because then everyone is just bonded to her, and there is no question, there is no, we have to do a whole, let's all hang out with Dawn stuff. And I know that for some people they may have wanted that. I think that when shows that initially target teenagers move out of the teenage phase of their character's life, they have a hard time trying to still like reach that audience while moving forward. And I think with Dawn, especially when you consider that at the time it was still airing on the WB, they probably just wanted to have a teen character that they could have younger audience find themselves through. And I think that they forgot that people hate teenage girls. People hate teenage girls. They don't like, I think even as a teenager, sometimes you find your own problems unrelatable. Like, I am so much nicer to YA protagonists now that I'm an adult than I was when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I was like, every teenager has to be super smart or they're a dumbass. You know, it was like I was really cruel to other teenagers. And as an adult and in my older 20s, when I watched, you know, Buffy, I was like, oh, I get it. She's just like in this weird space where like there's so many things happening around her and she has no control and she feels lost and adrift and her mom is sick and she just literally came out of nowhere, and it's like, it's a lot of things for her. So I think that she's a character that I empathize with. She's very much a Sansa type for me. But again, people don't like Sansa because they're wrong.
You sleep.
Yeah. What's your point?
Well, I can't take you in a fight or anything, even with a chip in your head. But you do sleep. If you hurt my sister at all, touch her, you're gonna wake up on fire.
Her biggest flaw is the untapped potential post-season 5. Because I think that post-season 5, that she has no magical ability, so that she doesn't actually play any big roles in the plot, is like a really major oversight. It makes her feel like even more of a tag-along. So it's like, for me, in season 5, I think Dawn is really the strongest, and I think that she continues to grow and be interesting. But I will agree that they don't really give Dawn the ability to be excellent, which I think is a damn shame, because Michelle Trachtenberg was doing the shit. She acts, and she has a similar way she carries herself to Sarah Michelle Gellar. Like, when I was watching, I watched Gossip Girl before I watched Buffy, so I knew, you know, Jordan Sparks, homegirl. And when I was watching Buffy, I was like, oh, that's where she got these tics from. And they look like they could be sisters. And I really appreciate that character. I appreciate the bond between Buffy and Dawn. I like that it feels so natural. The fact that even though they're not technically related, there is no question about it. They are sisters. And I think that Buffy needed that family to ground her in some way, because without Dawn, she would have no family. And Joyce was marked for death. I think The Body is actually an excellent episode. I think that her death was handled brilliantly. No notes, because it made me cry. Should have gotten an Emmy nomination for that. Sarah Michelle Gellar, you are owed that. I like Dawn. She's cute. She's adorable. I heard that she ends up with Xander in them comics. Girl, enough. Okay, don't do that. We all know that Dawn is like by Pan, so like let's not play these reindeer games, okay? Dawn is not here for Xander. Xander? Disclaimer for like the 16th time. I think that Tara and Willow are super important. I think their place in, you know, LGBTQ representation is profound. I would never take that away from anybody. And I think that they are both interesting characters. I think that they are, you know, meaningful to a lot of people. And I enjoy their dynamic overall. But as a relationship, they are boring. They are so boring. Like Lindsay Lohan in Liz and Dick, I'm bored. I'm so bored. Like Oz forever. Love Oz. And also, just to be quite frank, Willow is trash. Willow is trash. Like, first of all, she cheats on Oz with Xander? I was so disgusted, y'all. Like, first of all, when I got into Buffy, I knew Willow to be a lesbian. So when I see her throw shit over Xander, I'm like, K-Pop, I was like, what's going on here, my good sis? Like, okay, peen, got it. But his? What, like, we going for cis males, we going for Xander? Sounds suspect. And then she goes with Oz, who is just the sweetest, best boy. Love him so much. Xander, then Cordelia, which you know is a mess, but they doing that. And then they cheat on their superior partners with their messy selves. And I was disgusted. I hate it. And Willow is the kind of character that she just aggravates me, because you can tell that she was someone who was bullied, put upon, awkward, and as she comes into herself, she then becomes a bully. She becomes an oppressor. She's so addicted to the feeling of being in control, of having power, of being loved, that she just cannot, like, she can't respect the boundaries that people set around her power or asking her for that, because she like it's holding her back. Like, even her trying to take Buffy out of heaven is just like this entitlement that she has the power to do so.
I think I was in heaven.
And I get it that can be empowering, and I don't think that Willow is a terrible character, but as a person, she is the worst. She's one of the worst. She's one of the worst to me, because she's a liar, and like how she treats Tara is awful. Like, Tara is the sweetest cinnamon roll gumdrop, and she treated Tara like poo-poo. Like, she rapes Tara because they have sex under dubious consent multiple times, implied, because she erases part of their memory. Like, girl. What? I don't understand. It's too much. It's too much for me. I don't like Willow. I don't like Willow and Tara, mostly because of Willow, but also because they're just very bland. But you know what? It's okay. I don't think that makes it a bad relationship. It's just boring to me. And still can be meaningful, still can be great. I mean, technically it's better than Willow and Kennedy, but you know, the bar can only go so low, you know? I will say this, however, I know people debate, like, do they think that Willow's sexuality is by erasure? I have kind of complicated feelings about this. I think that, like, a couple years ago, I would have said yes. I think Willow would absolutely be bisexual. But I also think that I don't think having dated men I don't think having dated cis men or been in love with a cis man at one point means that you can't eventually identify as a lesbian because you only moving forward want to date or feel an attraction to other women. I think that sexuality is complicated, and I think that when you are a teenager and you are attached to a person, they're your best friend, you put feelings onto them that maybe are just platonic plus, but you think it has to be love because those are your feelings. I think even with Oz, you know, she was finally having that kind of attention. I think that she loved what he made her feel, but I don't know if she loved him. And I think with Tara, she found someone that she felt love because she fought to keep Tara in a way that I don't think she fought for Oz. And I also think that, you know, I guess kind of speaking to my own experiences, is like, while I am bisexual, I still feel an attraction to men. I still feel now, as I get older, more attraction to women than I do to men. Like, I actively feel that, and I think that, you know, it's a fluidity to it. I think that the bisexual conversation maybe I think the issue with the bisexuality conversation is not that it's not a valid part of Willow's identity, but I think that we were in a time where bi erasure was so rampant that it feels like bi erasure because of that, not necessarily because the character could have just gone through an evolution where she's like, you know what, I felt an attraction to men, but I don't think that was actually love. I think that was just kind of like deep infatuation, and like, this is love. This is what I want to do. But I think it's something that like writers today would be able to handle, and not so much writers back then, especially because most of them were not queer themselves. So that's how I feel about that issue. Okay, and now for the take that I know is gonna make you all so mad, and I'm sorry in advance, but this is how I feel. And again, debate me, it's fine. I love it. Comment down below. In season 7, I think Buffy should have got kicked out of her house. Because she was doing the most. Season 7 is unwatchable to me, even more so than 4, because every character is just acting like character development, character growth, character trajectory over the past 8 years. I don't know her. Like, everyone is acting like they don't know each other's relationship, like they have no real bond. Everyone is just being ridiculous. And I understand that Buffy was like, I'm the Slayer, I'm in charge, I'm bad for y'all mofos, like 2 going on 3 times. Like, don't ask me no questions. I understand that, sis, because I'm backing you. I'm backing you. But here's the thing, though. If you want me to risk my life for Spike's Fagul, you gotta convince me about that, because I'm not doing it. I'm not fighting for Spike. I'm not fighting for them. Like, no. No. And then, like, yes, Xander got his eye jumped, but, you know, nothing of value was lost there. But she got all these children just running around, rambunctious, just picking all over the place. And it's like, girl, you gotta take care of these kids. Like, why are you in your house if you don't take care of them? It's like, this is why you shouldn't have kids on these shows anyway, because it's like too many youths. Like, I feel that way about even with Unearthed. Like, I know why you have this child here, but like, can she be grown? The reality is that they just do so much to make you lose trust in Buffy. And I think for me, her stuff with her and Giles and Robin was just so messy. Like, her defense of Spike in season 7 is inexcusable. He is only, and I know the argument about Spike versus Angel is like, Angel was forced to be good because he had a soul, and Spike learned to be good. But I'm like, both of them were forced to be good. They both pieces of shit, y'all. They both murderers, y'all. They both torturers, y'all. Let's not act as though that's the qualifications we're talking about today, okay? The issue is that, what do they do in the show? What do you do in the show? In the show, we only saw Angel act a fool when he got his soul yoinked out of him. We saw Spike being terrible until he got the chip because he physically couldn't do it anymore. Because he physically could not kill people. That was the issue. Not because he just stopped caring. He's like, I just can't do it, so I guess I'm gonna drink blood out of his blood bag. Vampire Diaries style, yo. Like, that was it. There is no, to me, that makes his character more interesting. Not that he's a reluctant good person. You know, Angel is also a reluctant good person, but he leans into it. You know, he does good work. Spike is just coasting. He's just trying to get through the next day. And that's why we like him. And the person that wants to kill him is Nikki Wood's fucking son. And you have no empathy for him. She has no empathy for this man. And I just found out to be just so antithetical to who I think Buffy is. Like, who literally stabbed her other vampire boyfriend in the chest and flung him into the future where his evil is law. You know, like, she did that shit. And she just got rid of him. And now she just putting everybody's lives and people's eyes and shit at risk for Spike. She can get out the house. She can get out the house. It's, and I hate to say that because I know that, like, there's this whole thing about, like, well, let women lead, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I say this with my whole feminist chest. Feminism, to me, is not about allowing women, especially white cis women, to be as terrible as men. Like, I'm not gonna be here and be like, yeah, Buffy, lead people to death because you're a woman, girl boss. Like, no, like, she was playing reindeer games and she got reindeer prizes. Like, I'm sorry, you gotta get out. And I know it was hard for y'all because it was done that day and you were like, not done, not this. I get it. I get it. But for me, narratively, especially with all of the weird race dynamics, especially with how she was acting, especially because I hate her relationship with Spike, now would I had left them in the care of Faith? Not particularly. Wouldn't have been my first choice, but y'all killed Kendra, who would have been excellent in the situation, but you did it. And then, you know, Faith did ridiculous things her own self, but That's why she on the spinoff. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. My knees are killing me because I'm standing at a weird angle so that it doesn't cut off my head. But I hope you enjoyed. I cannot wait to read all of your comments and your opinions about Buffy. I know it's a show that so many of us love and so many of us feel passionately about, and I cannot wait to read and see that passion. And I love you all. Have an amazing night, and I will see you all soon.
Grr, arg.